Right this exact second, thousands of American sailors are enforcing a suffocating ring of steel around the Islamic Republic of Iran, and not a single ship has breached the perimeter. 13 massive vessels just attempted to run this naval blockade and were forced to turn back, staring down the barrel of U.S. Navy warning shots and armed boarding parties. But while the mainstream media focuses entirely on the Persian Gulf, the real war has already moved to orbit. Iranian military commanders are actively utilizing Chinese spy satellites to lock onto American bases. And back in Washington, the government is completely paralyzed by political infighting over the exact surveillance tools required to hunt down Iranian sleeper cells already operating within the United States. Forget the sanitized press briefings, we are watching a multi-dimensional superpower collision in real time. Here is the unvarnished, structural intelligence briefing on the absolute edge of global conflict. To truly comprehend the sheer magnitude of the strategic crisis currently unfolding, an analyst must aggressively deconstruct the exact parameters of the maritime interdiction strategy presently being executed by the United States Armed Forces. The Pentagon has officially confirmed that thousands of American troops are actively working to completely block Iranian ports in a massive, systemic effort to ramp up maximum pressure on the regime. The operational success of this endeavor is undeniable, as the impenetrable blockade has already forcefully compelled at least 13 separate maritime vessels to turn around and abandon their trajectories. What makes this initial phase so tactically significant is the pure projection of psychological and kinetic deterrence. The United States Navy has achieved this absolute compliance without being forced to physically board any of those 13 interdicted vessels. However, the military chain of command has made it unequivocally clear that this passive compliance is not a guarantee for the future, and the rules of engagement are incredibly lethal. The blockade applies universally to all vessels, regardless of their origin, heading to or departing from any Iranian port facilities. The United States military has issued a stark zero-tolerance warning that any commercial or state-sponsored ships that dare to ignore the parameters of this blockade will be met with immediate, overwhelming kinetic force. The Pentagon explicitly detailed that any ship attempting to cross the blockade line would instantly result in American sailors executing pre-planned tactical maneuvers specifically designed to bring overwhelming force to bear on that vessel, including boarding the ship and physically taking it over if necessary. The military hierarchy has officially authorized a highly structured series of escalated force options for these encounters, which definitively includes the firing of warning shots and other aggressive measures to ensure absolute maritime submission. This overwhelming projection of American naval supremacy is deeply anchored in a historic, unprecedented regional military coalition that has fundamentally reshaped the security architecture of the Middle East. Admiral Bradley Cooper, the commander of United States Central Command, delivered a highly significant operational update confirming that a vast network of Gulf allies currently stands completely ready to actively defend the United States. The geopolitical alignment is staggering. Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, and Jordan have been officially praised as exceptional teammates who have bravely defended both Americans and their own sovereign territories in an inspiring display of regional unity. Yet the most strategically profound element of this coalition is the unprecedented integration of the State of Israel. Admiral Cooper explicitly stated that there has been absolutely no better teammate in this conflict than Israel. In a display of overwhelming, synchronized aerospace dominance, the four most capable air forces on the planet, the Israeli Air Force, the United States Air Force, alongside the highly lethal aviation assets of the United States Navy and the United States Marine Corps, have seamlessly integrated their operations. Together, this formidable aerial armada has consistently met and exponentially exceeded their own highly classified military objectives time and time again. The United States command structure has explicitly requested that these allied forces maintain a state of absolute readiness during this volatile period, a directive that they are currently executing with exact precision. As this massive geopolitical vice tightens, the tactical reality of Operation Epic Fury continues to evolve dynamically on the ground. Reporting directly from Tel Aviv, Trey Yingst confirmed that top-tier military leadership, including the Secretary of War, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper, have unequivocally stated that the United States military is fully prepared if combat operations suddenly resume. The operational tempo has not diminished. American troops are described as highly motivated, intensely focused, hyper-vigilant, and absolutely ready for the next phase of kinetic warfare. The military apparatus is actively utilizing this current window of time to aggressively rearm their stockpiles, meticulously retool their technological assets, and dynamically adjust their specific combat tactics, techniques, and procedures. As the military leadership noted, there is absolutely no military organization in the world that adapts and adjusts to battlefield realities quite like the United States Armed Forces, and that is precisely the rapid evolution occurring at this very moment. The overarching strategic objectives binding the United States and its Israeli counterparts remain perfectly aligned and non-negotiable. American commanders are engaged in constant, real-time intelligence sharing and operational updates with their Israeli counterparts as both nations rigorously prepare for the distinct possibility that all diplomatic negotiations could catastrophically fail. The shared, identical goals of this monumental military endeavor are crystal clear: the absolute removal of all enriched nuclear material from Iranian territory, the total and permanent cancellation of all uranium enrichment capabilities within the borders of Iran, and the guaranteed, unimpeded opening of the critical maritime straits. While the military hammer is fully cocked, a highly delicate and fragile diplomatic shadow game is playing out simultaneously. The White House has officially signaled that a critical second round of peace talks might be visible on the horizon. If this highly anticipated next round of diplomatic negotiations manages to miraculously come together, White House officials have made it explicitly clear that these critical summits would likely take place once again in the city of Islamabad. Furthermore, the administration has emphatically clarified that Pakistan serves as the one and only recognized mediator in this incredibly complex negotiation process, strictly rejecting any diplomatic interference despite numerous offers of assistance from a variety of other nations. The information space surrounding these high-stakes negotiations is highly contested, requiring rigorous analytical filtration. The White House vehemently dismissed and actively corrected bad reporting that falsely circulated claims suggesting the United States had formally requested a diplomatic extension of the military ceasefire that is scheduled to officially expire next week. Administration officials emphatically stated that such claims are absolutely untrue at this moment, while maintaining that the United States remains very much actively engaged in the ongoing diplomatic talks. Direct communications from both the Vice President and the President this week have characterized the back-channel conversations as highly productive and continuously ongoing. From the Iranian perspective, the diplomatic posture is framed entirely around ideological survival and sovereign recognition. Iranian officials have publicly indicated that highly sensitive messages are actively being transmitted back and forth between the United States and Iran, specifically aimed at systematically closing the vast geopolitical gaps obstructing a broader, more permanent ceasefire agreement. However, the Iranian leadership has explicitly demanded that any subsequent negotiations must definitively acknowledge the sovereign rights and national interests of the Iranian nation. Tehran's baseline requirement for a fruitful diplomatic engagement demands that what they categorize as their legal, sovereign rights are fully recognized and that their national dignity is deeply respected on the world stage. While certain regional sources express a cautious optimism regarding the ultimate possibility of securing an agreement with Iran, the stark reality remains that extensive military preparations for renewed kinetic conflict continue unabated. Simultaneously, the United States is aggressively expanding the theater of its macroeconomic warfare to unprecedented global dimensions. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs officially announced a massive expansion of the naval blockade against Iran, declaring that it now unequivocally includes all shipping vessels, absolutely regardless of their stated nationality or flagged origin. This is a profound escalation of international enforcement. The United States military issued a severe global warning that American naval and aerial forces will actively and relentlessly pursue any vessel belonging to the so-called Dark Fleet that is observed aiding or assisting Iran, actively hunting these illicit ships sailing anywhere across the entire globe. The explicit, calculated objective of this global maritime dragnet is to apply such overwhelming, crushing economic pressure that it completely obliterates Iran's remaining oil revenues. Washington firmly believes that this total fiscal strangulation is the only mechanism that will successfully drive the Iranian regime back to the negotiating table and force them to accept a comprehensive deal to permanently end the conflict. This intricate web of military blockades and diplomatic maneuvering is occurring under the massive, looming shadow of great power competition, specifically involving the People's Republic of China and the Russian Federation. The geopolitical calendar is counting down to a profoundly consequential moment. Exactly 4 weeks from today, the world will watch as President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping hold a highly anticipated summit in Beijing, China. The diplomatic posturing ahead of this superpower collision is already intensely volatile. The Chinese foreign minister recently issued a statement declaring that Beijing's primary objective is to forcefully push both Iran and the United States back to the tables of negotiation. President Trump has openly addressed the incredibly complex dynamic regarding Chinese military hardware entering the theater. While Trump stated he was very happy that China has supposedly agreed not to actively send lethal weapons to the Iranian regime, a massive, highly dangerous loophole exists in the realm of aerospace intelligence. As the president correctly noted, physical weapons are fundamentally different from orbital satellites. This critical distinction was thrust into the global spotlight following explosive reporting from the Financial Times, which revealed that the Iranian military actively utilized advanced Chinese spy satellites to precisely target United States military bases during the conflict. This revelation of Sino-Iranian aerospace collusion fundamentally alters the threat matrix. Senator Tom Cotton, the highly influential Republican from Arkansas and the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, offered a chilling assessment of this development. While Senator Cotton refused to officially confirm or deny that specific intelligence report regarding Chinese satellites, just as he refused to confirm or deny highly classified reports detailing active Russian military assistance to Iran, he stated ominously that such covert, destructive actions sound exactly like something both Russia and China would enthusiastically execute. Cotton analytically reminded the public that these adversarial nations have a long documented history of engaging in these exact types of proxy intelligence operations, dating all the way back to the shadow conflicts of the Cold War. The American executive branch is highly aware of this proxy interference. Senator Cotton confirmed that President Trump and senior administration officials have already engaged in direct, high-level communications with their adversarial counterparts in both China and Russia, explicitly warning them that the United States will absolutely not tolerate such covert military and intelligence aid being provided to Iran. Furthermore, Senator Cotton completely dismissed the notion that Beijing possesses the geopolitical leverage to dictate American foreign policy, stating emphatically that China is absolutely not going to force the United States to do anything, nor can they forcefully drag America back to a negotiating table if Iran remains stubbornly unwilling to capitulate. In a fascinating macroeconomic twist, the implementation of the American naval blockade is actually weaponizing the global oil market directly against Beijing. Senator Cotton provided a sharp economic analysis, pointing out that this ironclad maritime blockade actually imposes vastly more economic pain and structural damage on China, as well as other heavily industrialized nations located in East Asia and Europe, than it does on the domestic economy of the United States. This is due to the undeniable geographic and economic reality that those specific foreign nations are immensely, structurally more dependent on the continuous, uninterrupted flow of Iranian crude oil. Consequently, the strategic calculation in Washington is that China, facing severe energy shortages and domestic economic friction, will be the entity that actually begins to intensely feel the pain of the blockade. This economic pain, in turn, is expected to force Beijing to exert massive, unbearable pressure on the Iranian regime, compelling Tehran to abandon its stubborn resistance and finally submit to the president's extraordinarily simple, non-negotiable demands: absolutely no nuclear weapons, zero uranium enrichment, the total dismantling of their long-range missile forces, and a complete cessation of all financial and logistical support for global terrorism. While this colossal geopolitical struggle plays out across the oceans and the skies of the Middle East, a massive, highly toxic political warfare campaign is simultaneously erupting within the domestic halls of Washington, D.C. The partisan fracture over the execution of Operation Epic Fury is total and absolute. Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer launched a blistering, highly aggressive attack against the commander-in-chief, publicly claiming that absolutely every single observable metric unequivocally indicates that Donald Trump's overall handling of Operation Epic Fury has been nothing short of an epic failure. Schumer weaponized the timeline of the conflict, aggressively reminding the public that Trump originally promised this war would be decisively won in a mere matter of days or weeks. Yet the nation currently finds itself grinding through day 47 of the campaign. The Democratic leader went on to make the highly controversial assertion that the critical Strait of Hormuz is not only completely closed to commercial traffic, but that it has somehow been successfully transformed into a massive, lucrative cash cow for the Iranian regime. Schumer controversially concluded his attack by claiming that Iran's actual operational control over the vital strait is significantly greater today than it was before President Trump originally initiated the military conflict. This fierce political rhetoric was immediately met with a devastating, highly structured counteroffensive from the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Senator Tom Cotton systematically dismantled the Democratic narrative, stating that it is deeply regrettable that Democratic senators like Chuck Schumer, alongside the vast majority of Democrats in Congress and the liberal media establishment, would actively and enthusiastically root against the success of American troops on the battlefield, simply if it meant ensuring the political failure of Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Cotton bluntly asserted that the core motivation driving the Democratic Party's rhetoric is a fundamental desire to see Donald Trump fail, which inherently translates into them actively rooting for a catastrophic American military failure abroad. Senator Cotton explicitly categorized almost every single claim made by Chuck Schumer as demonstrably, factually false. Relying on the official military briefings provided by Admiral Cooper, Cotton declared that the United States military is either perfectly on time or vastly ahead of its scheduled objectives across every single line of operational effort. He emphasized the systematic destruction of Iranian capabilities, noting the devastating impact American forces have had on Iranian missiles, their mobile missile launchers, their vast drone swarms, their naval assets, and their aerospace forces. Furthermore, Cotton completely rejected the notion of Iranian economic resilience, stating that as a direct result of the blockade, Iran is currently trapped on the economic ropes. While acknowledging that intelligence always knew Iran possessed the asymmetric capability to temporarily close the Strait of Hormuz, Cotton emphasized the ultimate reality of American hard power. The United States possesses the absolute unilateral military power to either permanently close the strait, meaning absolutely nothing comes out at all, or to use kinetic force to permanently blast it open. The geopolitical ball rests squarely in Iran's court, but the unforgiving mathematics of time are absolutely not on their side. The Iranian regime is currently hemorrhaging hundreds of millions of dollars in badly needed existential revenue every single day that the American naval blockade remains firmly in place. The intersection of this massive foreign conflict with American domestic security has brought an incredibly contentious legislative battle to the absolute forefront of the national consciousness. The critical impending reauthorization of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, specifically the highly debated Section 702. This incredibly complex legislative debate is occurring at a moment of maximum national vulnerability, a time when the intelligence community is profoundly, deeply concerned about the highly terrifying prospect of highly trained Iranian sleeper cells already operating covertly within the borders of the United States. Senator Cotton passionately directed the attention of the American public directly to the stated position of the Commander-in-Chief regarding this existential national security tool. As the ultimate authority who not only reviews the most highly classified intelligence but also legally authorizes covert and kinetic actions based upon that critical data, President Trump has actively and forcefully encouraged the United States Congress to immediately pass a simple, clean 3-year legislative extension of the FISA 702 surveillance authorities. In a masterclass of political and legal differentiation, the president has deliberately drawn a highly useful, critical constitutional distinction between Title I of FISA and Section 702. Title I represents the specific, highly controversial legal mechanism that was notoriously and unconstitutionally abused by the Obama administration's Department of Justice and the FBI to illegally spy against President Trump and his political campaign apparatus during the highly contentious 2016 election cycle. In stark contrast, Section 702 is a highly specialized, absolutely vital surveillance tool that is legally restricted and utilized solely and exclusively to conduct vital espionage operations against foreign adversaries operating strictly on foreign territory. To illustrate the terrifying necessity of this specific intelligence capability, Senator Cotton asked the public to envision a highly plausible, incredibly dangerous scenario. An elite member of the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps sitting securely in Iran, actively utilizing encrypted communications to coordinate lethal kinetic strikes with Houthi rebel forces operating in Yemen. Without the immense global interception capabilities legally granted by Section 702, the United States intelligence apparatus would be utterly blind to these types of coordinated transnational terrorist and military plots. The scope of this surveillance authority extends far beyond mere counterterrorism operations, aimed at preventing attacks either here at home or against American interests abroad. As chairman of the Intelligence Committee, Cotton explicitly revealed that Section 702 is absolutely fundamental to the successful execution of conventional, large-scale military operations. He stated with chilling absolute certainty that he is highly unsure whether the United States military could have possibly achieved the overwhelming tactical successes it did during operations in Iran, during previous covert actions in Venezuela, or even during the aggressive maritime interdiction of sophisticated drug cartel smuggling boats without the vital signals intelligence provided directly by Section 702. Recognizing the absolute existential necessity of maintaining this global surveillance architecture, President Trump has urgently demanded that Congress pass this simple 3-year extension without delay, and the Senate Intelligence Chairman echoed that desperate plea, warning that the legislative body must act promptly before this critical national security tool officially expires on Monday, plunging the American defense apparatus into absolute darkness. What you are bearing witness to is the total, multi-dimensional mobilization of the American superpower apparatus. From the sun-scorched, contested waters of the Persian Gulf, where thousands of American sailors enforce an ironclad, suffocating economic quarantine, to the shadowy, highly classified realms of orbital espionage, where Chinese satellites actively hunt American assets, the unipolar order is being violently tested. We are watching a simultaneous forefront war, a kinetic aerospace campaign that has systematically dismantled the Iranian military machine, a ruthless macroeconomic blockade designed to starve a hostile regime into absolute submission, a high-stakes diplomatic poker game culminating in a looming superpower collision in Beijing, and a vicious, bare-knuckle domestic political brawl over the very surveillance tools required to protect the American homeland from infiltrating sleeper cells. The lines between military force, economic strangulation, and intelligence gathering have been permanently erased. The United States has thrown down the ultimate gauntlet, presenting the Islamic Republic with a binary, inescapable choice: total capitulation to the demands of a non-nuclear, terror-free existence, or the absolute, unrelenting destruction of their national economy. As the clock ticks down toward the expiration of the ceasefire and the impending expiration of vital intelligence authorities, the world holds its breath. The blockade is holding, the interceptors are armed, and the ultimate geopolitical reckoning is arriving. Stay vigilant, because the architecture of the next century is being forged in the fires of Operation Epic Fury right now.